Vice Mayor Chilton.
Here.
Councilmember Moeller.
Here.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here.
Please let the record reflect that Councilmember Hall is excused.
Thank you. And to begin our Pledge of Allegiance, I've asked former Napa City Council member Mark Van Gorder, who is here in another role that we'll find out about in just another moment, if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. And on behalf of Councilmember Dornbecker, I will just say you do not need to adjust your sound if you're listening at home. She is not feeling 100% today, so we hopefully will get her voice for as long as we need it this evening. So, but we will move ahead to adoption of tonight's agenda. Do we have any changes or corrections? If not, is there a motion to adopt?
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We're going to move right ahead to the first of our two proclamations. And this first one is to proclaim May 18th through May 24th of 2014 National Public Works Week. So, Graham, I see that you're here, and I know Kevin wouldn't be here otherwise. So if I could get both of you, because of all the long hours you already put in, that's what I mean. If I could have you both join me at the podium to receive the proclamation. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I see you all the time here, so lucky you. Why don't you guys, if you could just slide right on over here so I can get closer to the microphone. Does that block you with your camera, though, Sam?
Yeah, I'll make you turn around.
Okay. So this is a proclamation for National Public Works Week, May 18th through 24, 2014. Whereas the American Public Works Association has sponsored National Public Works Week since 1960 to recognize the people who devote their professional time and energy to public works. And whereas this year's theme is Building for Today, Planning for Tomorrow, where building points out the day-to-day aspects of public works that is quality of life, while planning references the sustainable practices that ensure that quality of life for future generations. And whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as streets, water, sewers, storm drains, parks, and public buildings. Whereas the health, safety, and comfort of our community greatly depends on these facilities and the planning, design, construction, operation, and maintenance services delivered by our dedicated public works employees. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor of the Town of Yountville, do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th through the 24th, 2014, as National Public Works Week in the Town of Yountville. And I call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions that public works staffs who create the foundation of a stronger and more livable community. Again, thank you guys very much. We'll make it work for you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. A few words to represent everyone else that isn't here.
Sure. Well, I think the proclamation covered a lot of it, but we are doing a few big projects this last year and this coming year. So the Town Hall structural strengthening. So we've taken the 1930 building and made it structurally safe for all of us tonight and in the future for if there is a major or sometimes when there's a major earthquake in the Bay Area, this building should still be standing while we're working on the recovery. We're doing the Madison Yount Street project, so we'll be fixing the sewers and fixing the street. So the street's been falling apart. Being a truck route, so we'll design that to handle trucks in the future. So it should hold up longer, and then we'll have a maintenance program to keep that street well maintained in the future. So our pavement condition index is moving up every year, so with the Measure T, that should help us sustain that in the future as well to keep our streets in good shape. And we're doing the recycled water project. So this is a large $3 million project to expand our recycled water system. So we'll be able to recycle 100% of our wastewater by treating it and then distributing it to the vineyards. So that's a sustainable practice, and we've been conserving during this drought. So I think we've been doing a lot of good things. I mean, our guys do day-to-day stuff at the parks, which everybody appreciates and sees. But there's stuff they don't see. You know, the water comes on when you turn on the faucet, and the wastewater goes away when you flush a toilet. So as long as those things keep working, then people often take us for granted. But when there's a problem and a tree falls in a house or a water line breaks or something like that, our guys will, get up there in the middle of the night and come on out. So appreciate the proclamation and the appreciation, and had a nice lunch for the guys today, and so hopefully we'll be able to continue this in the future. So thank you for this.
Thank you. And I did just want to recognize on behalf of the whole council, you touched on some of what I was going to mention, but the kind of invisible efforts that you put in those middle of the nights, middle of the storms, that isn't as noticeable on a daily basis, like the parks and the clean streets and some of the big capital improvement projects that we do. But when you're there, having to come sometimes from quite a distance where you live to support the community, that's not going unnoticed by all of us here, and certainly a lot of the residents, hopefully all the residents, recognize that and appreciate it, and so we all say thank you. So,
Thank you.
And please pass that on to the entire team.
I will.
Thanks very much. Next, we have a presentation proclaiming the month of May, Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have two special guests with us tonight. Sarah Hayes, supervising mental health counselor for Napa County Mental Health Division, and she's brought a special guest as well. So if I could have you join me at the podium. Thank you for being here. So now you know what's going to happen.
That's right.
This is a proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month. Whereas Mental Health Month provides an excellent public education opportunity to illustrate the importance of mental health in the lives of all. And whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, with many Americans experiencing times of difficulty and stress in their lives. 1 in 4 adults, or 60 million Americans, each year struggle with a treatable mental health condition. And whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions on society and on families. And whereas stigma and fear of discrimination keep many who would benefit from mental health services from seeking help. Whereas emotional well-being is critical to the success of our families, communities, schools, and businesses. And whereas greater public awareness about mental illnesses can change negative attitudes and behaviors toward people with mental illness. Whereas we envision a future where people affected by mental health challenges are socially included, valued, and supported in their wellness and their recovery. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor of the Town of Yountville, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2014 as Mental Health Awareness Month. And I call upon all Yountville citizens, agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental illnesses, eliminating stigma and discrimination, and promoting appropriate and accessible services for all people. So once again, thank you for being here. There you go. Of course.
So I just wanted to thank Yountville Town Council on behalf of Napa County Health and Human Services Mental Health Division for proclaiming and declaring May as Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'd also like to introduce Juanita Pena, who has just a couple words to share with you. Thank you.
I wasn't sure what to expect, but I'll do the best that I can. I just want to talk a little bit about what happened or what helped me when my daughter was diagnosed about 16 years ago with schizoaffective disorder. It basically turned our lives upside down. First of all, I want to thank the county, because if it wasn't for the county of Napa, I wouldn't have an advocate. That advocate happened to have a lived experience of a daughter who had bipolar. They came to my house with a social worker. My life was already turned upside down 2 years prior to that. always trying to find help. Police would come over. We were known as a crazy family in the whole block. And because of the county having an advocate on their grounds, I was able to have someone who navigated me through the system, which finally got me to Parents Can. Parents Can is a parent-child advocacy network, which I currently work for now. And part of the job description is you have to have a loved one with a mental illness or other specific diagnosis, developmental disability. What I got from Parents Can was hope, family empowerment, emotional support, acceptance, workshops, support group, and most of all, a job. I am now a parent partner. I work for the Nexus Wraparound Team, Napa County, and also I'm privileged to run a support group for grandparents who are raising their grandchildren because my daughter had a baby, my mentally ill daughter, so that really helps me to get through the day. And also Parents Can helps me to heal and recover. It's been a long time, and there's been a lot of stigma, especially with my daughter saying, everybody says I'm crazy, Mom. You know, you don't think I'm crazy, do you? And I said, well, you know, Erica, you're not the person that I knew before, but I love you and I accept what's happened to you, and together we're going to get through this, you know. And so I want to say thank you again to the county, because it took all that to get me back to the services where she got a case manager, and now she's on conservatorship because she's in danger of herself and others. So she's currently in Yuba City treatment facility. She's been in and out of jail, lockdown facilities most of her life. Sweet person, if you were to know her. And we're going to go see her on Sunday for Mother's Day. She can't wait to see her little boy. And it's through the kindness of others in the community that helps with break the stigma.
Thank you.
We have an event May 13th at McPherson Elementary. It is a community dialogue to increase awareness about mental health, and I invite you all to come. I have some little flyer handouts I'll give to Michelle, and we also have access cards for mental health access, and as well as psychiatric emergency access 24 hours a day that I have available for you as well. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
And could you share our website or contact phone number for anyone that might need to reach out?
Our access contact phone number is 259-8151. And we also have a 1-800 number, which is 800-648-8650. So thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you for being here.
Appreciate it.
We will move now to public comment, and now is a chance for anybody that's here on an item that's not listed on tonight's agenda. Now would be the time to address the council. Is there anyone wishing to do so? You're all here for a reason previously determined. Okay. We'll move right ahead to our consent calendar. We have 3 items. Any discussion, or is there action on that? Thanks, Kevin.
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. 2 coughs for a yes. The next time I couldn't help that. It was perfect timing. Our first presentation tonight, PG&E, and we have the previously before mentioned Mark Van Gorder, who is now the government relations representative for Napa and Marin counties. And I'm going to try this. I'm going to try it. Sarkis? Yes. That was the easy one. Sogomonian? Yes. Okay, or at least that's what you're going to go with tonight, right? Welcome, and we are going to learn about the gas line projects coming up on Weber, Jefferson, and Washington Streets. Welcome.
So, thank you, Mayor Dunbar and council members. This is my first time before this body, certainly not the first time that we've talked or met, worked together. I did want to let you know that on the off chance you don't have my contact information, I have given my cards to Michelle.
And she has given them to us.
And my role with government relations is to work more directly with folks who are elected, work directly with your town and city managers, county administrative officers, and also have the opportunity when we have projects like this to work with Public Works directors. So that is my role. I think it's appropriate and coincidental that we're here tonight celebrating the upcoming National Public Works Week and talking about the importance of infrastructure. That's what we're here to do tonight. And so Sarkis is going to introduce the team and make the presentation and answer any questions that you have.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sarkis Solomonian, and I'm the PG&E Gas Transmission Project Manager. Just wanted to take this opportunity to also introduce the PG&E team members that are here today.
Paul Valdez, customer impact.
Aaron Murphy, customer.
Bridget McCann with Media Relations.
Luke Roy, Assistant Project Manager.
Josh Eager, Gas Distribution Project Manager.
Craig Woosley, Construction Manager.
Welcome.
Thank you. Just want to go ahead and explain the project and what we will be doing and where the work will take place and some of the details to the town council. I'm not sure who's running the PowerPoint. Oh.
Is it on ground? Seems stuck. If it doesn't go, it might not be on the bottom.
Yep.
No?
Oops.
There we go.
All right.
All right.
The overall project scope is installing a new gas transmission pipeline named DREG 14523 to bring gas to the existing regulator station that's on Jefferson Street between Weber Avenue and Humboldt Street. And once that's done, then we would be able to retire the existing DREG 0407 that is currently feeding the regulator station. This is the design drawing of the work. Up on top, a little hard to see, but on the left is Highway 29, and what we will be doing is doing 3 HDDs, which are horizontal directional drilling bores, to install the pipeline. On the bottom, you'll see the profile of the 3 bores that are going to be installed. The first bore will start west of Highway 29 on the shoulder. That'll be the entry of the bore, and we'll be exiting roughly in the middle of Weber Street between Highway 29 and Washington Street. The second bore will start at that location in the middle of Weber and terminate at the corner of Weber and Jefferson. And the third bore will be from the corner of Weber and Jefferson, and it'll terminate near the existing regulator station that we have. And you could see that the bore underneath the Highway 29 is quite a bit deeper as needed. The other ones are a little shallower. These are just a couple of photos of typical HDD or horizontal drilling rigs. They're just they're very common. This is pretty similar to the size and the model that we will be using for the work that we will be doing. This is the schedule that we have. We're planning to mobilize on May 19th, so we will be out here on 14th to mark the site and to the USA call. So when we show up on the 19th, all the utilities will be marked and we would be ready to start. We will be installing the pipelines, the different bores between May 22nd and June 4th. And once we complete that between June 5th and 17th is when we would go ahead and tie the different sections together. We would hydro test the line and do the final tie-in, and then we'd follow it up with the retirement and clean the final aspects of the project and demob on the 25th of June. We will be doing community outreach 2 weeks before we mobilize. Letters are going to be mailed to all customers that we have within 500 feet of the project, and 1 week before we mobilize, we'll canvass door to door to anybody who will be within the line of sight of the project. And we will also do IVR notifications in advance of any gas clearance, and we'll also use that if there's any changes or updates that we need to provide. When we're working, all the work areas will be delineated to make sure that there's no pedestrian or vehicular traffic coming into the work areas. We will use traffic control to divert vehicular traffic around the work areas. And any work that we're doing with holes or trenches, we'll cover them up at the end of each day's work, so nothing will be left open overnight. And lastly, we have a remote lay-down yard that we have, so that'll minimize any equipment or materials that would be stored within the town. There's my name, and that's my email and phone number should anybody need to reach me. And just want to see if any questions that you would have.
I'll start with a couple of questions.
Yes.
One related to the noise and what should we expect with those drilling machines, and two is traffic control. Are you closing single lanes at a time so there's still vehicle traffic, or are you closing entire streets?
It depends on the work that we are going to be doing. For example, on at the times when we are doing the drilling, we'll try to minimize the closing the road. So when we're working on Weber, for example, we would close that section of Weber so people can't drive in. But we will allow for local traffic. We would escort people in and out of their houses, so they would not be, not be able to come and go from their house. The only time that we would not have vehicular traffic is when we do the HDD and we drill the bore, and we will be pulling the pipe back. That's really a critical time, because we would like to minimize vehicular traffic into that block if at all possible at that time, because it's a critical time. But we'll do our best to escort everybody in and out of the street.
And how significant do you anticipate the noise impacts in the neighborhoods?
I don't have an exact decibel reading on the machines, but there wouldn't be any louder than any other construction equipment that will be out there.
Other questions from the council? Councilmember Moeller?
Is this going to be a main line or a branch line off of one of the mains?
Yeah, thank you. It's what PG&E would qualify as a transmission line. There's a transmission main, DFM 405, that runs on the west side of Highway 29. So we will be tapping into that. So this would be called a DFM, so it's a distribution feeder main. So it will be bringing transmission gas from that main to the regulator station. So it's the transmission line.
But isn't there, we have another main, or you might have that runs along Washington Street.
Right. There is
up to Fennell.
Correct. There is a DFM right now that brings gas to that regulator station. So what this would be is that's really an older line, and it's older infrastructure that we need to retire. So this would be basically putting in a new line to bring gas to the regulator station, so we can retire that existing
one. The one that currently goes along Washington.
Right. It runs from the reg station south along Jefferson, then it kind of kicks over to Yount, goes down towards Champaign.
Okay, so that will be retired after this work is done.
Right, that's why we're doing this, so we can retire that. Because if we retire it, then there will be no gas coming to the reg station. So we would be basically bringing gas to the reg station through this new DFM, so we can retire the existing one.
Sarkis, could you talk about the phase 2 for the distribution on Washington Street, the schedule for that?
Right. I'll have Josh kind of help out on that. When we install the new DFM and we have gas coming to the reg station, the second phase is that existing DFM that you mentioned would be used by our distribution team. And I'll have Josh explain that scope of it.
Thank you very much, Sarkis. So the plan for the distribution end is to mobilize the crew in January and to essentially cut off that transmission and as it's deactivated and insert a new distribution line within that and utilize it as a casing.
Timing, did you say in January?
January to February, yeah. It's about a 6 to 7 week schedule.
So the one that we were talking along Washington that goes to Yount, that won't be deactivated. It'll just be used as a casing for
Correct.
Okay.
So essentially, Sarkis indicated that as soon as the gas transmission is connected to that new reg, then they will then be able to deactivate that component that's feeding those customers. We'll go ahead and insert within that, utilize it as an old casing.
Okay, so my next question is regarding trees. I know you have the Pathway Pipeline project. It's extremely controversial, and we are a tree-loving town as well. So let me just talk about the transmission lines first. Have you already inspected those? The one that is on the west side of 29 and the one that we're talking about that will be, you're going to run a pipe through the pipe?
I'm not sure. I really don't know the specifics of any pathway investigation in this area. You know, I'd have to look into that. I know I really don't know the specifics. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Because I know we'd be very concerned about cutting down trees so you can inspect your lines, which brings me to my last
Right.
question.
Well,
the
before
line
we,
that's
before we
going to
leave trees, Martin, from what I've seen on the plans is that the pipeline will be underground and not impacting the trees.
Well,
Because they're going to be in the middle of the street.
right.
And then the work on Washington Street from Humboldt down to Oak Circle will be within an existing pipeline, so it won't affect any trees either.
But their
Yeah.
pathline inspection plan, if they ever do inspect, because they don't really know if they have or they haven't, there's been a lot of trees that planned to
Yeah,
be cut down in Walnut
the-
Creek and Concord. It's been a pretty big issue. So that's the question I'm really trying to get at.
So I think you're asking a broader question about how pipeline pathways may be affecting.
Well, I also want to know this new one, and I think Graham just said it runs down the middle of the street, so there will not be any trees affected.
The installation work will not require us to take out any trees. You know,
Okay.
the work that we're going to be doing, the new transmission line, we're going down basically the middle of the street, so
Great, okay.
there are no trees. You know, we're not in the sidewalks or things like that.
Okay.
We'll be in the middle of the street.
So if you ever need
But
to
the-
inspect those trees, won't be an issue. That's
yeah,
great
but
news.
the broader question that Mark was talking about is.
Yeah, I just want to make sure while we're here and while you brought up that language that I know has been a hot button and concern for folks, is pipeline pathways is not coming to Yountville, is not coming to Napa County or other counties that I'm aware of anytime in the future, and they're visiting, PG&E is looking at how we may address protection and the reliability and the safety of the gas lines
Right.
and the trees as well.
Okay.
That's not, I just make it clear, that's not part of this project, and it's not planned anytime in the near future.
Okay,
and
great.
if at such time discussions are re-engaged about how to protect the gas lines and protect the trees, we will be in full communication with this council and your public works director and town manager and community.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for answering all the questions.
Yeah, in fact, I think when we had done a review of the project, not so much cutting down trees, we don't expect to even need to do any trimming of the trees.
Okay.
So this is really preventive safety work that you're talking about principally here. So there are no failures in the aging infrastructure.
Well, yeah, exactly. The pipe that's there, it's old, it's aging infrastructure, it just needs to be retired. So here's an opportunity for us to put a new line in. The people who designed the system felt it was best to bring the gas out to the DFM that exists on the west side of Highway 29. So just upgrade, upkeep, just like any other infrastructure. Things get old, they just need to be replaced.
Because we did have a few minor leaks over the last 12 to 18 months, I think, and so that kind of raised some eyebrows of concern about, was this a precursor to something that could have been more significant? So
Right, so that will be retired. When that's retired, as Josh said, that will be used as a casing. So basically, so you can put the plastic pipe inside of it. So it would remain in the ground, but it would just be used as a casing.
right.
Okay.
Once you're finished, we won't even know you've been here.
Right.
To
Councilmember
that
Mueller.
point, one more quick question. So you'll be tearing up the street, and so will you be replacing the street to its current standard then?
Yeah, we're waiting for the encroachment permit, so whatever the town requires us to do, that's what we'll do.
All right, great. Thank you.
So what we've done is scheduled or delayed our microsurfacing project on Washington Street. So if you remember, PG&E did work last year. Mike did the microsurfacing up to Oak Circle from the south end of town. So when they're done with the pipeline work on Washington Street, then we're hoping next May or June, then we could do the work from Oak Circle up to Weber. And so we've microsurfaced after they're finished.
Okay, good. So we're not tearing up a good street and trying to patch it back up.
And the work that we're going to be doing with the bores, it's about 900 feet of pipe that we're putting in, but we don't have to dig a 900-foot trench. We have 4 holes in one short little trench near the rec station, so it really minimizes the amount of pavement that we would have to break into.
Great.
Any other questions from council? Anyone else here from the public that wanted to address the issue? Yes. Hello?
Good evening, Jerome Gigliotti. I had several questions. First, what is the diameter of the old and the new line?
So if you go ahead and ask your questions, and then we'll ask for some feedback when you're finished.
Love them. And what is the decibel level of the digger? And what will the shut-off location be coming into town from 29? Where will the shut-off be?
Both lines are 4 inches in diameter. And as far as noise level, I don't have an exact decibel. Craig, do you have any idea what the dB might be on those things?
No, without the make and model number
Yeah.
used by the contractor.
I would expect it to be just like any other construction, like a backhoe or whatever else that will be operating, but I don't have an exact decibel number.
If you could send that to town staff, and we can include that in the materials that we have available for the public, that would be appreciated.
I will do that. And the questions about the valves, where the DFM 0405 is on the west side of Highway 29 that this line will start from, there's currently a valve there. So where we tie in, there's already a valve. And for the rec station, where this line comes in and is going to tie into the rec station, there's a valve there also. The valve station has a safety valve, so should you need to turn off the gas to the rec station, there's one nearby. You don't have to go all the way across 29 to turn it off.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks
you
for the
very much.
presentation and for the introductions of the team.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And just to follow up, they keep talking about regulator stations. So essentially what the transmission line on Highway 29 is high pressure. It's sort of medium pressure down Weber to the regulation station, just like our water pressure regulator station off the transmission line from the Veterans Home and Rector Reservoir. They bring the pressure down to a distribution level, so it's a lower pressure in the distribution pipes. And so when the pipeline on Washington Street is replaced, it'll be just a distribution, which is a lower pressure. So that's sort of some of the language that they're talking about to clarify for the public.
Thank you. Thanks again for the presentation. Next up, we have one of our own, Christy Shepard, who's the Napa Valley Museum Executive Director, but tonight she is Vice Chair of the, thanks everybody, thank you Mark. She is the Vice Chair of the Yountville Arts Commission, and we are going to get our year in review. Welcome.
Thank you very much, council members. I appreciate the opportunity. This is so weird. I never use a microphone. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you and just do a real quick year in review of what Yountville Art Commission has been working on. And I would really like to recognize Sam, who walked away. Sam Holland and Steve Rogers, who are staff liaisons and facilitate all the work that we do and let us know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong and help us add some art to the town of Yountville. So I put together a little slideshow, and you also have I believe you have a handout from Kim Cook, our chair of our committee. Let's just go to the next slide. There we go. All right, so our commissioners this year, we added 2 new commissioners, and we inducted everyone, or appointed everyone as a commissioner, but you also nominated myself and Vincent Zeus, who is a new Yountvillean. I think he's about a year. And I put Sam up there. But you're not pictured. So Yountville Arts has about 4 departments, quote unquote, if you put them. Our book club, which is run by Nancy Gates. They have monthly discussions. The most exciting thing we did this year was have a book release with author Lydia Crichton, who is a local artist, and we had a camel parade down the streets, which was a really fun endeavor, and it got people very excited. And also last summer was the first annual Yountville Reads, where Nancy and the committee invited everyone to come out and read a portion of their favorite book or favorite recipe, and it was really fun and engaging, and we will be doing it again this year. I believe in June. We've looked at scheduling that. May 22nd. This is why we have Sam. The gallery at the community center, we've had quite a few exhibitions this year. Currently is the Napa Valley Open Studio Show, where juried artists are collected from Napa Valley's open studios. We had a sale during Taste of Yountville. So their work will be on display through the end of May. And Whiskers, Tails, and Ferals are a rescue group in Napa that helps find homes for cats and dogs, and apparently chickens, goats, and bunny rabbits as well. But we had an exhibition, a photograph exhibition of some of the animals up for adoption. It was really exciting. We were able to help that group adopt out a lot of animals and really make a big difference in our overpopulated cat population. Beyond the Garden Gate was a partnership with the Master Gardeners, the UC Davis Master Gardeners Napa Valley chapter. And then also this winter we hosted Made in Yountville, which was an exhibition featuring Yountville residents who are artists as well. So that was a really fun community partnership for us, and to showcase some of the emerging and amateur artists in the Valley, and also some of the more professional artists as well. I discovered quite a few amazing artists that we'll be using at the museum. And then one of the most obvious parts of what the Yountville Art Commission does is the Art Walk. There are 26 sculptures on the Art Walk. I know we've added quite a few recently that you've probably seen around town. 9 of them sold. It's really kind of amazing. I'm always shocked at people that walk down the street and they just buy a $6,000 sculpture. But apparently that happens a lot more in Yountville than it happens any place else in the world, I think. The Yountville Art Walk, I get a lot of feedback just being at the museum and also from the commission, being on the commission, that people really enjoy it. They enjoy it so much that we're losing tomatoes outside of Hurley's right now. But it's fantastic. It's a very exciting addition to the town. I think that the tourists really like it. I'm sure you get a ton of feedback, whether positive or negative, from the residents and tourists. It's something that we're most proud of on the commission, and something that Kimberly works incredibly hard to accomplish, in soliciting artists that will fit our themes or fit the needs of the town, and also work well with the businesses in town who help host some of the sculptures outside of their locations. And we installed 4 new sculptures this year. And then as part of our art walk, we hosted the 2nd annual Yountville Art Sip and Stroll. I've got to remember not to have savor in there this time. And that was last April. We did our 2nd one, of course, again this year during Arts in April, and it grew this year. Last year we raised about $3,000. This year it was approximately $5,000. As some of you heard from my previous presentation at the TID, we don't have the exact numbers in yet, but it was a fantastic afternoon. Of course, I brought the perfect weather with me, so it worked out a lot better. It's a really fun event. The visitors enjoyed it, and we really got to showcase a lot of the artists that are on the art walk. So that's kind of what we're doing. I don't want to take too much of your time. I know that you have a lot of pressing issues to address, but I am here to answer any questions, and if you have anything else, let me know.
So in case folks didn't notice, that we already lost the red Can't Stop sculpture
Yes, sold.
to purchase in Europe,
Switzerland.
was it? Switzerland.
The shipping costs more than the sculpture. Yes, we lost that one, and I think a lot more are going to be coming up for sale soon.
And unfortunately, we're hearing that similar to the Stone Mushroom Garden, the tomatoes are a little bit too popular.
Yeah, but that's okay. You know,
It's not
controversy
okay.
is good. Well,
Yeah, no.
I work with artists all the time. It's not great, but we know how people are in art walks. It often happens that people want to touch things, and the artist is fantastic. Kim spoke with him today, and he's not concerned at all. We are much more concerned, of course, than he is. He's going to fix them and secure them. He doesn't want to. We thought about moving it and suggested possibly moving it to a different location or taking a different sculpture. The artist does not want to. And sculpture artists are very used to people touching and climbing and poking and prodding at their pieces. So we'll add some signage and encourage people to remind them that it's public art and should remain for the other members of the public that would like to come by.
And they may be charged the full value of the
You might
piece.
just have to
if
buy
they-
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Under surveillance.
Under-
Just put that
yeah.
out there.
New security measures are being put in place.
Yes.
You can't identify them.
Right.
Any other questions from the council, comments? No, thank you, and please pass on our heartfelt thank you, and keep up the good work. It's come a long way since the first few exhibitions where we were trying to figure out who was going to bake cookies and who had some extra wine to bring for the reception. So,
Well,
great
and
job.
thank you to all of you who support us continually and come and attend our receptions as well. We really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you. We are going to move on now to our one public hearing this evening on the application for Bouchon Creamery. We'll start with the staff report.
Tonight you have before you a use permit application for Bouchon Creamery to establish an ice cream store at Edward James Courtyard in the space, the vacant storefront that was most recently occupied by Raz Gallery. And the proposal is to sell ice cream and sorbet, frozen yogurt, and soft serve ice cream, to make milkshakes, and to serve toppings from Bouchon Bakery. The store would be open from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. in the winter and until 9 p.m. in the spring, summer, and early fall months. There would be 3 employees with overlapping shifts, and during the period from 3 to 5 p.m. there would be an overlap of all 3 employees, but otherwise there'd be a maximum of 2 employees on site. The ice cream would be produced on site during the early morning hours of 4 a.m. Until 10 a.m. by 1 additional production employee. And ice cream may be ordered from the counter, and it will be dispensed from that counter for customers to enjoy at tables and chairs within the shop or at tables and chairs in the courtyard. And Edward James Courtyard was developed in 1986 under a master development plan that allowed the different retail, including visitor serving retail and office uses, and that's a complex that surrounds that interior courtyard, and it has the 32-space parking lot that's on the north and east sides of the building. The parking lot was originally created to address the parking demands of the needs of the complex and the different retail and commercial uses that are on site. We are supportive of the use, and the retail is in keeping with the residential scaled commercial zone and the surrounding area. As you recall, in 2012, the council approved an amendment to the RSC zone where there were permitted uses, allowed uses, and those with a use permit, and an ice cream shop falls within the category of uses that require a use permit. And we find that the use is similar to those within the center and surrounding properties for commercial use. The number of employees, the hours of operation, the use of the outdoor spaces, and even the parking lot. Although we do note that retailers in and around the downtown area, they generally require employees to park off-site, and that results in an impact to the neighborhoods. And we're suggesting a condition of approval that the applicant devise an employee parking management plan to accommodate some of the employees on site. Otherwise, the change in use and the renovations to the space trigger 2 main issues I want to discuss. One is the requirement that the storefront meet current ADA standards, and neither of the entrances to the storefront meet those standards. The walkway on Washington Street doesn't meet the maximum slope standard, and we know it's a steep sidewalk there. Washington Street is set at a higher grade than the development itself, so that doesn't comply. Nor does the entry that provides access off the courtyard. There are 2 steps that are required into the space. So with these renovations, we're requiring that the space comply with ADA. The ADA requirement can be met in several ways, one of which could be to install a lift at that courtyard entry. Whether the aesthetics or the loss of space is something the applicant wants, that's up to them. Another option that is a more comprehensive approach to the issue would be to address the walkway on Washington, not just to access this storefront, but the site as a whole, and really to address broader liability issues for ADA. We know that the applicant has been in discussions with a civil engineer, and then it indicates that an ADA walkway is possible. It most likely involves a retention wall and perhaps switchback walkways to the 2 storefronts. Staff notes that this is our commercial core, and that a pedestrian orientation is important to both of the storefronts, and having a direct access on the street is important. So we've included a condition of approval for ADA access. How that's ultimately solved will be determined when the applicant submits plans, and those plans would have to conform to town requirements, although they'd be reviewed later since we don't have that set of plans in front of us, nor know the applicant's preference. Another issue that's raised by the change in use from a general retail to a food service retail is the introduction of food waste into the trash stream. And the trash enclosure is a fenced but unroofed or otherwise unenclosed enclosure at the north property line adjacent to residential parcels. And in the past, we've received complaints from neighbors that there are impacts with noise and sound, and we believe that the transition of this use to a food service business will result in an intensification of those impacts. So we're suggesting several conditions of approval. One is that the enclosure be fully enclosed and roofed. And we found that when that type of construction has been used on other commercial properties, it generally mitigates the impacts. That's even when an enclosure is right on a residential property line. The Water Quality Control Board has standards with related to stormwater runoff, and we would require that the enclosure be connected to the town sewer system and that it drain first to a grease interceptor before it enters the sewer. Those two requirements provide an opportunity for the applicant to relocate the structure, perhaps closer to the street and the sanitary sewer mains or laterals, which has the added benefit of pulling it further from the residential properties. So those are the two main issues. The other conditions of approval are more standard in nature. And like I say, we are recommending approval. We don't anticipate great impacts from this use, and it is consistent with other commercial uses. And it should be nice to have an ice cream shop in town as summer approaches. Thank you.
That's it? Questions about the staff report from council?
No. I'm gonna hold on.
Questions? No.
No questions. I do have some questions in the conditions. Let me start here with condition. I'm going to kind of work backwards, I think. Condition 21. You've referenced the trash and recycling areas shall be fully enclosed and covered. So if we're talking only tonight about potentially action on the use itself, so these other conditions you could work out administratively at the staff level, is that what we're saying? Like the location of and the condition of the trash enclosure that would meet your...
And that's because all of these conditions require that the applicant submit an improvement plan to both Public Works and Planning staff for review and approval to assure that they meet the town's requirements. And so we can address sensitivity issues with locations as well.
Okay. Then items 11, 12, 13, I mean, kind of this whole run of things that have to do with the storefront entry and the Washington Street frontage. A couple questions I have. One, knowing the condition that has occurred with the success of the bakery and where the line forms, I want to be sure that we're not creating an unsafe condition with the anticipated success of this business and an outdoor line forming, blocking the restaurant parking lot immediately to the south. So are there conditions, requirements that we have that they regulate, control somehow the customer line and the impacts on that? Whatever the condition of the sidewalk may or may not be, that's where I'm worried about knowing pedestrians, they'll just kind of line up anywhere they want.
Very good point. It's not included as a condition of approval, but we can to require that the line queue to the north, that they provide signage on a window indicating that customers should queue that direction. Probably take a little management on behalf of the employees to make sure that they're not blocking access. But if it's as successful as the other Keller businesses, it's something that we should anticipate. And it can be added as a condition.
And it's hard to add that condition at this point since we have no idea what their choice is going to be with how they want to handle the ADA accessibility issue. Do we have to concern ourselves with what apparently is a flooding condition in that property, or is that purely a private property owner issue? The previous business had those issues. They related to the slope along the street. Is that something that's private ownership concern?
That is, although I'm sure that's something that they'd want to resolve for the own, success of their own business.
But since they own it, that's not our concern about, okay. And then there was mention in here about, I think it's condition 12, relating to the existing connection to the street opposite the driveway to the V Marketplace parking lot shall be eliminated. I wasn't sure what that was referencing. Is it that people are encouraged to jaywalk across the street, or what is that what you're talking about?
Right. By having the driveway across the street connect with pretty much the walkway on site, and encourages a crossing at that location. And if we were to close this, the curb off, it may encourage pedestrians to use sidewalks. Of course, if they're going to want to cross anyway, it's going to happen. But maybe it will be a visual barrier to try to discourage it.
Or you're saying it may turn into the ADA solution, that there may be some way
Potentially,
to
but if you recall in that space, we have the railroad curb and gutter, and then there is like an 8-foot opening, and what staff is conditioning is when the curbs are replaced, the curb linear will be replaced the whole way, so there won't be an opening.
But my point is, the ADA condition may be, you mentioned retaining wall and switchback walkway, that might be the solution also.
It could be, but what I'm also saying, right now, there's a gap
But
in
at the
the
very
curbing.
least, there would be a
Correct.
closure
And-
of that.
And also closing the curb also will help to improve drainage flow, because right now, the way that opens, street drainage ends up coming down. So the idea is the curb line will be a complete curb line with no gap in between.
Okay. In item 13, you're referencing street trees. We don't have any protected street trees in that area, but we're talking about if any get eliminated, there would be a condition to replace them either on the property or another location in town. Is that roughly
Correct.
what our standard is?
And that is because the trees are located in an area where the sidewalk may work because it's at street grade level. It all depends on what's ultimately decided out there. But we have some significant Chinese pistache trees at the property frontage.
Yeah,
We'd
especially
like
to
to
the
be-
north in front of the Hope and Grace
Mhm.
space.
And they should be replaced on site.
Okay, let's see. I've already talked about the customer flow and the trash enclosure. Okay, so those are my questions for right now. Councilmember Mueller?
Back to the trash and the recycling area. Currently, that is a dumpster. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you were talking about parking, maybe adjusting for employee plan, which in the past, we've done a lot of tandem employee-only parking. So my question is, the trash truck that comes to empty dumpsters it needs turnaround space, unlike the ones that does the cans. And we really don't want cans taking up parking spaces on the street. So the intention is to keep that as a dumpster. And,
Correct.
okay.
Mhm.
And the parking will adjust accordingly?
Mhm.
Okay, great.
With no other questions from the council, I'll formally open the public hearing, and so I don't forget, I want to reference the first public comment, and then I'll invite our applicant to do this. We did receive an email, the council received, from a local resident, Carol Fink, who is in strong support of this project. She urges us to approve the proposal. So I wanted to recognize and just make sure we have that in the record, which the town clerk has already done. So that would be the first public comment. Now I invite our applicant to speak. Welcome.
Hi. Dave Chebatari for the applicant, and essentially we're in agreement with staff report. We have a lot of work to do to figure out the ADA implications. The goal is to do something that makes sense, but we don't know what that is yet. When the building was originally designed prior to our ownership, there was a street plan and a sidewalk scene approved by the town, or I guess it may have been county, right?
86 was town.
Okay. It was never implemented. So staff has requested us to rethink that. We've hired an engineer to look at several options. once we get approval tonight, I think the goal is we're going to continue with those drawings, work with staff, and then it all becomes financial feasibility. So it's just a matter of, can the ice cream shop carry the burden of, the entire sidewalk across the building. So the goal is to work on that and hopefully come up with something that works well for the town and ownership. That's really it. I don't have any other comments.
So the main point of being here tonight with this application is you're looking to get approval for the use, and then you'll invest the time and money and everything in the solutions. But
Correct.
at no point in doing the solutions prior to the approval of the use.
Correct. Right. That's our intent. And we, I think the goal is to what we are trying to do is reposition the whole center, and from the parking lot in its entirety, the trash. I mean, a lot of that we were fully expecting. The grease interceptor, all those things would be county health conditions as well. So it's just a matter of getting them on site, making sure it makes sense, and we're going to work through it. So I mean, it's really a goal to, number one, get the space occupied, get it to something that would, what we perceive of value, something we know, and which we think would be a great addition to the town, both for the tourists and the residents. So we're excited about it, but at the end it does come to the numbers, I mean, but it should work. If we got to discuss a line problem, I'd be happy to come back here and discuss that. Okay. But and we also think from that the goal is really to bring life to the courtyard. It was a courtyard concept. Originally all the front of the stores are really in the courtyard. Hope and Grace front door was an add-on, I think, in '07. That door was not there on the initial build of the building. So it was a courtyard concept. I know the town has deviated from that, and we want to support that. So we think, we can work together and do it. To the comment on the drainage problem, the space situation was resolved, and it really wasn't from the street, but it was just needed. Anytime you build something in a hole, and that building is subterranean, it will fail over time. So just the time has taken its toll on the space. So we've gone in and we've repaired that issue, at least temporarily. But if we're going to put a food use in there, we have to put drainage and everything in there anyway. So we'll be, making changes to the floor anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Other questions of the applicant?
No.
Councilmember Dornbecker?
No, I have a question for, excuse me, Sandra. When, after the applicant takes us back and does the redesign and everything, will it come back before us?
No,
No.
we'll process that administratively.
And it won't go before the Zoning and Design Review Board either?
No.
Thank you.
So if there are any significant changes from the use that we would potentially be approving tonight, that would come back to us. But the conditions as they're listed, we would be basically saying staff has the authority to negotiate those conditions.
Correct.
Not negotiate the conditions, but
Implement them.
the conditions of the property. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? No? Thank you. Any members of the public like to speak on this item? Now would be the time. Seeing nobody come forward, I'll close the public hearing and invite discussion by council. And I'll try to reserve Councilmember Dornbecker's voice, so I'll start with Councilmember Moeller.
Well, I have very few comments, except that I think this is great. I bet everybody in town is really excited about having a ice cream store that the Keller Group is going to be putting on. They definitely had me with the peanut butter cup flavor, but I'm not going to put that as a condition. So I think it's great. Thank you very much for doing this and bringing it to Yountville. We just keep improving, and many thanks to everything you do to make those improvements happen. So sounds good to me.
Councilmember Dornbecker, as best you can.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. I think I can support it. I would hope that the applicant would consider routing the line through the courtyard, since that goes along with the wanting to bring more life to the courtyard anyway. And I can support it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I agree. I hope it happens and look forward to it. The only thing that I do want to put as an asterisk is you're generally operate with no more than 2 employees. I'd be willing to bet money that's not going to be enough, but I'll just say that right now. Otherwise, it's certainly an improvement, and I think that's the biggest problem is that area has always been quiet, we'll put it that way, and it'd be nice to have some life. So I support everything that's been put in here. And I don't think there's a need for, first of all, I do want to say I think that the administrative process for some of these details is very positive. We don't need to sit here and nitpick about that kind of thing. And, if there's a line, hopefully there's a line, as you said, but I think it's in the applicant's best interest to make sure that's well managed. And if nothing else, I have a strong suspicion that you won't block your own entrances.
You never know. It's not always up to the owner of the business. But my principal concern was the additional employees, as the vice mayor mentioned. I would anticipate more than 3, and so that, of course, made me start to worry about the parking lot. But with the use already being basically a pre-approved use, that's really outside of our purview on this. I just worry that having sat through many of these land use discussions and how many of those parking spaces have been contracted to other businesses to share parking, I would just request that staff be very diligent about paying attention to that. There was talk of an additional space being added once the trash enclosure gets rebuilt and relocated. I would just encourage that attention if there's any way to increase capacity on site. So with that, I see staff report and the comments prior to this are I agree with them that principally only positive impacts will come of this, and look forward to giving a little infusion of energy to the courtyard. I know some of the uses are meant to be a little bit more subdued, but look forward to filling that vacancy. So that'd be the final comment I have. Councilmember Mueller?
No, I was just want a motion.
If there is one to be had, I think there probably is.
All right. I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 3170-14, approving a use permit to allow Bouchon Creamery to establish an ice cream shop at Edward James Courtyard located at 6540 Washington Street, assessor parcel number 036-061-018.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Unanimously approved. Thank you for that application. And before we move on to our administrative regular items, I'm going to call for a 5-minute break so that we can give council a little bit of a breather, if said council can breathe. So we'll be back in 5 minutes.
I do support that.
Hold it.
Okay, we will.
That's
there we go.
Thank you.
So apparently,
Oh, see, Kevin, you didn't miss anything.
I'm going to restart. Thank you for everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Toohey, who's the Emergency Service Coordinator for the County of Napa. And tonight, we're asking the council to approve a resolution authorizing the town's approval of the Napa County Operational Area Hazard Mitigation Plan 2013 update. And yes, that gives you an indication of what the document will actually look like and read. But we're going to give you a Reader's Digest kind of thumbnail version of the 339 some page document. In short, though, this is the regional Bible, if you will, for our emergency plan, our emergency planning and management as we respond to emergencies. The town, as you know, contracts with both the County of Napa Sheriff Department for law enforcement and with the County of Napa Fire Department. So they are integral to us in our emergency operations. And this is also, what's really important is FEMA and CalEMA have requirements that the regional area adopt in order to be eligible for financial support and, more importantly, grant funding should there be a incident in which we need to seek funding. And the town has been in the past a recipient of a FEMA grant. Some of you may remember we used the FEMA grant to help construct the flood wall around the two mobile home park communities. So it's an important part, and one of the precursors that will happen now is we will begin updating the town of Yountville's emergency response plan in concert with this regional plan. So Kevin's here to share a little bit about that from the county perspective.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Kevin Toohey, Emergency Services Coordinator for Napa County. As Steve said, it is a living document that we need to update every 5 years. The Disaster Mitigation Act, FEMA passed in 2000, requires all communities to have a plan in place. And that plan then dictates what your emergency operation plan is built on. Basically, the hazard mitigation plan, you look at your risks, and then you look at how you're going to mitigate those risks. The update from 2009's plan, FEMA then said, you know, what we need to do is focus on plan maintenance, and we need to get more of that into the program. So what they've done is they required us to develop a maintenance for the plan, because what happens is normally with these plans is we develop them, we put them on the shelf, and then we review them when we need to 5 years later. And FEMA's saying, well, that's not really the way it should be. You should look at it. It should be a living document. So part of the plan update, and the major part of it, was us developing a plan maintenance section and to address that. And what we're going to do here in Napa County is we developed a planning committee representing all the jurisdictions in the special districts, the hospitals, Red Cross, everybody. We had all the players at the table, and then we developed the update of the plan. We reviewed our risks and our mitigations, and then we talked about plan maintenance. So we're going to review it every 6 months and dissect our risks and our mitigations and review those section by section, so that at the end of the 5-year period, we basically have done our review and then be able to present that to FEMA, and it won't be such a monumental task every 5 years. One of the key components of this process this time was that Napa City had developed their own plan separate from the county's operational area and all the other jurisdictions in the county. So they were part of our process. They're updating in the process of currently updating their plan, and then they'll be submitting it to FEMA for review here shortly. But the overall goal now is to bring Napa's plan and annex it into the county plan, so we will have a true multi-jurisdictional plan for the entire county. The next step is for us to then update our emergency operation plan, which is due now and hasn't been done. It's supposed to another 5-year plan. But in the precursor of all the documents for emergency operation plan, it says we have a disaster mitigation plan or a hazard mitigation plan, and this is what it is. These are our risks and our mitigations, and our emergency operation plan is built on that. So that's what we're going to be, as soon as I push this across the goal line, which will be in the next 6 weeks, and we'll resubmit it to FEMA for final approval, then we start on the emergency operation plan. So for Napa County, I'm responsible for planning, training, and then emergency management, and this was one of my tasks as far as planning. So I'm sure you guys spent a lot of time digging into the document.
I got to see this earlier today at the flood control.
There you go.
Same plan. Oh, I did just want to highlight in the report that you gave this council a score of 3.5 on our willingness to listen to what you have to say. I'd like to believe that's a little bit higher than that, but to change policy or programs was moderately willing to very willing to change policy or programs in there. Okay, so that's good to know. But I also wanted to just recognize, because this was a concern as I looked at this, you've acknowledged the potential future development or at least a facility master plan review of the Veterans Home in this, and that you've called that out in your future development section. So we have no idea what issues may arise. They may mitigate some issues that we have or create new ones. We just have to wait and see on that.
Right. We'll get them at the table and then bring that to you. And we'll have the town of Yountville will be part of the process in the planning committee and review that.
Mm-hmm.
So our operational area meetings are every 2 months and well attended, so all the players are there. I plan to have our review committee meet after an operational area meeting, so we can get them there and then dissect our risks and review our risks and then our mitigations regularly.
Good. Any other questions about the presentation of the report? No. It is thorough, I will say. Very thorough.
Yeah, it was quite an undertaking.
Well, and I was impressed that the Yountville section was, at least in the index, a lot longer than the City of Napa section.
Well, next time, if we annex them, theirs might be a little longer. I'll say that, Mayor.
You mentioned they kind of have their own plan going. So, have they already integrated the components of the flood mitigation that exist now, or how does that work out since it's potentially years from being finished?
Well, they identify the flood risk in their plan and then what the mitigation, and they identify the core project as part of it. And they're doing the same review that we are with the flood and water conservation. They were at the table and brought that forward. That was a big update on our plan because there's been so much done in the county as far as that plan. So our flood risks are becoming mitigated. I always say Mother Nature bats last, so we never know. And I experienced 2 100-year floods in 2 months' time in St. Helena when I was fire chief there. So you never know, but I believe that Napa City, getting them annexed in our plan will help.
Any other questions? Any member of the public like to address the plan? Seeing nobody coming forward. So the request tonight is to adopt this plan as presented. So without further discussion, is there action from the council to adopt this plan?
You would like a motion, Mayor?
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 3171-14, authorizing the adoption of the Napa County Operational Area Hazard Mitigation Plan 2013 update.
Second. Sorry.
And since there are only 3 of us, this needs unanimous approval. All in favor?
Aye.
We got through it.
Just as an update, I plan to take this to the Board of Supervisors. It's agendized for June 10th. I have Calistoga's get their resolution on May 20th, and then I've got it agendized. So we should have it approved then by our board, and then it will be sent to FEMA for final adoption.
Just if you would note the unanimous approval that might increase our willingness to participate score.
I'll get your number up next time.
Or we lease up to 4.0.
I will do that, Mayor.
Thank you.
It's above Calistoga's.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Is it really?
Have a good evening.
That's funny.
Okay, but to be serious, it's important to we are recognizing the hazards and not just waiting for the county, but we're involved in that whole process. So that's good. Moving on, general plan update. Let's see, what do we got? Informational report on the costs, which were significant. Timeline and benefits of a comprehensive update to the town's 1992 general plan, and these numbers certainly made it fairly obvious why it hasn't been updated yet.
Yes.
Okay.
So the town council asked staff to present a report on the potential costs and timeline of conducting a comprehensive general plan update. And as you know, the town's general plan was last updated in 1992, and state law requires that California jurisdictions periodically update their general plan. And they don't set a firm timeline on doing that, but it's generally thought that a general plan should be a long-term vision document, and that a 20-year span is feasible and reasonable. So based on the fact that ours is dated 1992, it definitely creates an opportunity for this discussion. So there are 7 mandatory elements of a general plan, and those are the housing element, the land use element, the circulation element, open space, circulation, noise, and safety. And the town is currently updating 2 of those elements. One is the housing element, and we're required to update that on an 8-year cycle. We're in that cycle right now, and it's due by January of 2015. In connection with that, we are also required to update our circulation element to address complete streets policies, and those are the multimodal modes of transportation, including pedestrian, bicyclists, safe routes to schools. And so that's on a concurrent timeline with January of 2015 as the completion date. So that leaves the 5 elements that haven't been updated since 1992, and things have changed since 1992. When we look back at that period, we see that the town's tourist economy has flourished. We see most of our development occur during that period. Many of the town's lodging establishments, pretty much all of the town's restaurants, and all of the tasting rooms. And during that same period, the town has struggled in attracting local serving businesses, although we certainly do have some, and they contribute to our economy. But the general plan is very specific and in detail about trying to grow that local serving economy, and even have some cautionary measures as to becoming a tourist economy. So in that period, we've also seen a rise in absentee ownership. We see more homeowners that have second homes in Yountville rather than living here primarily. We've also changed our approach to land outside our jurisdictions. For example, Domaine Chandon, the sewer connection occurred in that period, and it's forced us to reconsider the issues of annexation. So all these things have changed since 1992 as they relate to the mandatory elements. However, there are also voluntary elements that would be ripe for consideration if we undertake this process. We don't have a tourism element or a historic resources element, or a sustainability or climate action plan element. When we look to the jurisdictions in the Napa Valley, many of them address all these issues with voluntary elements. So the question is, how much does a general plan cost? Well, we know it's expensive because it requires a consultant to help with most of the workload. We don't have staff that can undertake this effort. We know that general plans are expensive because they involve a lot of community outreach and participation. That's probably one of the single most factors driving the high cost. We also know that a general plan takes several years to complete, so it's spread over this several year period, and I think we'd look at, a fair term would be considered 2 years to do a general plan. So we're estimating that the cost is between $500,000 to $700,000, and of course we can it depends on how we shape the elements of that plan. But this is a fair estimate based on the responses we've had from planning directors and finance directors in the state that responded to an inquiry, and so shows we're in the ballpark. Can also share information about St. Helena's general plan, and they have committed $1.3 million to their general plan update. And granted, their situation is different than ours, and so we don't expect to spend that much, but theirs included their housing element update as part of the comprehensive update. We also know that they already have 3 mandatory elements that need review, and they were 3 voluntary elements. They already have historic resources and tourism and an economic element, but they were also suggesting 3 more voluntary elements. I think it was sustainability. I can't think of them off the top of my head. So it's just simply a greater workload. We also know that they started with 1 consultant that did a year's worth of effort, for visioning, and they were in $350,000 when they decided it wasn't a good fit. So they had to go out a second time for an RFP. So it's cost them more, it's taken them longer. But that's informative for Yountville. It would help us structure our RFP and the workload based on that experience. But we are giving you that ballpark figure, 500 to 700. So we do think it's time to consider a comprehensive update, and we are turning to you to get some feedback and see if we can move this along if possible.
Do you know the timeline for St. Helena? This next effort? I mean, are they looking at a multi-year, and if so, how many? Do you know?
I know that they're several years already into the second RFP. That was in 2008. They feel as if they have a plan that could be approved, but it all boils down to whether there's political support for it and how the public feels about it. So they're uncertain of how much more time it's going to take and what the path to get there is at this point.
Okay. Any questions about any answerable questions about the staff report? Councilmember Mueller?
I would just like to ask Steve get his input on, this is a big undertaking, and even though we're going to use consultants and experts to really get it done, this is going to take a lot of staff time. So can you just comment on where you are with everything and when it would really maybe start, and what you think time that staff has really to help support it?
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Mueller. Sandra and I have discussed a little bit of this in a kind of a planning phase, if you will. And what I would anticipate if the council chooses to ask us to go forward this year is that we would begin and request an ad hoc committee from the council to work with, and then we would start working on developing the RFP for the consultant selection. So a lot of time would go into doing some research, discussion of what voluntary elements we want to do, trying to understand a little bit of the end product, some of the internal public engagement process. The better job that we can do crafting and developing the RFP will assist us then in moving forward with that RFP. So I would anticipate that would be the primary workload during this upcoming fiscal year, and that we would try to have the consultant on board in maybe the April-May time period, and then begin the project in earnest in what would be the 15-16 fiscal year. So we would start building the budget and then augment that.
Thanks.
So this doesn't already exist? The general parameters of an RFP don't already exist that we can't get from some? I know you use some as comp as you could find jurisdictions, but it just seems like for us to have to start from scratch, it sounds
No,
like.
we won't have to start from scratch. The jurisdictions are very willing to share information. What we do need to know is we need to spend a little bit of time making sure that the RFP fits the nature of what we're looking for, because, for example, if we pick a non-tourist community, some of the things they're looking for in the approach wouldn't necessarily be a good fit. So there'll be some things for us to review and some samples that we can get from other jurisdictions. But also the methods for engagement are very different than in how this community, and that's been one of the key things we note from the council conversation, is that you're looking for a process that will be involved in, and how do we work to ensure. So we may be using some different techniques and strategies, hopefully, to make sure that the broad spectrum of our community participates in the general plan.
So these mandatory elements, what I also worry about, unless, Sandra, you can tell me that this isn't going to be the case, if we focus on conservation, for example, and we're trying to deal with greenhouse gas and other water conservation and whatever, we think we have a plan, we tailor our plan to what we want to do here in Yountville, and then the state says that's not good enough for the state. Is that potential, or this truly is our plan, whether it standalone meets state or federal requirements, that's a different issue?
I would say you're correct as to that. This is our general plan, and it's to to be the policies and the vision of this community. We would like to look a little more broadly because we know there's a lot coming down from the state level with SB 32 and AB 375. So there are sustainability and other issues out there that it really would make sense to incorporate those in. But we can't predict what isn't already out there.
Well, and frankly, I appreciate that answer better than what I would fear, which is we'd have to keep looking over our shoulder at what the state is, deciding for us. So if we can truly kind of work in a bit of a vacuum here for our plan, then I feel more comfortable with that. Not with the cost of it all. But Vice Mayor, did you have any questions? Other report?
Excuse me. Is the housing element the only item of the general plan that has to be approved by the state?
I believe so,
Okay.
yes. Correct.
Not the
That is
circulation?
correct.
No.
Okay.
But we have to have the other elements in place to be eligible for things like funding and grants and things of that nature.
Well, I realize we have to have something, but what that something is up to us.
Right.
For example, a good example on that is you don't have to have a sustainability element, but we're still going to have a game plan at some point to meet the state's requirement on greenhouse gas and a climate action plan. So part of our strategy is to do some of the prep work, evaluate including it in a longer term element point. I do think one of the things, and Arnold can chime in, but often, if you recall, when you're presented with findings that you need to make when you're making your decision as a planning commission on your land use issues, you need to make a determination that the action you're doing is consistent with the general plan. So, I mean, that sounds simple enough, but now you're at a point in time where we're using a 1992 document, and are the actions that perhaps you want to take, are they in 2014 consistent with what was crafted in 1992. So I guess the framework, that's just something for you to think about, that we are operating under those policies. And if you want to change some of those policies, this is the opportunity by which you are able to do that through your general plan update.
Well, and I know the Vice Mayor has a follow-up, but before we have the town attorney mention it, just looking at under the mandatory general plan elements to address the issue, the housing element, I think we all agree and understand that that's going to be a requirement to hit state numbers as we know them. But even further down in the staff report, the policies about circulation we need the circulation element as part, I think, as you just said, as part of the housing element. So indirectly, those are also kind of state thresholds to reach, whether they give us a specific matrix to decide what is a circulation element that complies within the housing element that they will certify. So I know in your due diligence you'll find out what exactly we have to achieve so that the state can sign off on whatever we come up with for ourselves. But the Vice Mayor had a follow-up.
Yeah, the question probably mostly for the town attorney. To follow up on Steve's comment about the need to show that our decisions that we make comply, in general with the general plan that exists. I assume, and we seem to have very broad latitude in how we meet that. Have there really been legal situations where, I understand if you go completely against, it says, this is for X and you do, B, completely opposite of what a general plan says. But, we can make general plan updates and rezone land, and you can do that all the time. Is that a serious legal liability concern?
Mayor and members of the town council, it always is the enforceability or challenges that may arise if there's a belief that the town council made a determination that is arbitrary and making a decision that it's not consistent with the general plan. The courts generally will uphold a decision by a local body as being, basically they say, well, the town will know best. However, there is the possibility if there's a determination that, and the key words are arbitrary and capricious, and if a court determines that the town really ignored the components of its general plan, then yes, it could in a lawsuit set aside a decision by the town council based upon noncompliance to the general plan. And I've only seen it happen once.
Who can bring such a lawsuit? Any member of the public?
Well, it depends under the circumstances. So let's use as an example, if there is a zone change and there is someone who objects to that zone change, the party who would object could file for what is called a writ in the Superior Court, saying that for whatever reasons, and one of the components or one of the arguments could be that the town's findings, that the decision by the town council in determining that the decision was consistent with the general plan, that the opponent would say, no, it's not, and here's the reasons why, and the town acted arbitrary or capricious.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions about the report? Seeing no member of the public in the room any further, we'll just continue on with our discussion and potential action. So you're requesting direction on what we want you to spend your time on going forward as it relates to this.
This is an attempt to get some feedback and direction because, one, it isn't a significant financial expenditure, and then, as you know, our adopted budget becomes our work plan. So this will be where our staff resources.
So let me just cut you off right there. Is there consensus that we would like staff to continue to pursue the process of a general plan update in this next year?
Well, I definitely think that we want to do that. It's been 1992. I mean, I think that really says it all. And all of us have been here, even less time than that. We've seen all the changes. And I think to have some input now into really what we want to see 20 years from now is very important, and to engage the community to really ask some important questions, like what could or should Yountville even look like, over this time. I think there are some real important questions we need to look at. What are our assets, our liability? We have so much reliance on the TOT. I think we've been lucky, and hopefully we'll still be lucky, but I think it's time to kind of look at those and figure out what the principles are that are going to guide our decisions, and what our strategies and goals are going to be. So when we start it, I think is really going to kind of come down to us, finishing our budget. That discussion is coming up next. There's some certainly funds earmarked in there, but I just can't really give you a big, long list of reasons why not to really engage our community, look at who we are, and, who we want to be in the future. So, yeah.
Okay, Vice Mayor, do you agree?
Amongst the three of us, if there's only three here, then there will not be consensus tonight. I mean, we'll have to get the input, I think, of the other two members. But, I think we have to have obviously we're required by law to have a housing element that's updated. And I think for many reasons, we should have a good quality housing element that addresses real issues. I just find the cost to be personally outrageous. I mean, I think it's just an unbelievable amount of money for a town of 3,000 residents. And if we had significant amounts of land that was to be developed, if we had plans like even St. Helena, where they've got or they've had roads to be extended to go through agricultural land to go to Silverado Trail. I mean, they've got much more property that is undeveloped than we do. We have almost none. I mean, I think we have very little control over the long-term direction from the path we're already on and what's already occurred. So I can't support 500,000, 750,000, whatever that number is. I just find it to be a number that I just think it's outrageous.
Which is why I wanted to interrupt the town manager, because we're not going to reach consensus tonight, clearly. And I think it would be inappropriate that we try to without a full council anyway. I would disagree a little bit with Councilmember Muller's comment that I don't think it's been lucky that we've succeeded where we have. I think it's been a lot of foresight and good management by councils prior to us, and including us. I do agree with the Vice Mayor not only does the numbers sound out of place for our jurisdiction, but I think we have been putting some of these elements together as we go, as we prioritize and need them. I do think that we can't ignore that we need to update an archaic general plan. This is a multi-year process, as we've been discussing. We need to. It almost reminds me about the town hall retrofit. It kept getting pushed off because of the price tag, not necessarily because of the need. I do think there's a need to do this. We shouldn't ignore it just because it's a high price tag, but I'm not convinced that now is the time. But I do think that we should table the discussion until we have a full council to get everyone else's input. So I think my recommendation right now would not be to give specific direction to staff to pursue the process for an RFP or consultant or any of that until we can speak to it on to a complete council. That would be my recommendation for action.
I agree.
Is that enough direction for tonight?
Well, and I want to point out, UDICE had asked for some background, so we tried to make sure that you're educated. One of the things that we can look at, although it's there's an alternative approach, and that's trying to do individual elements and update them, but that's not necessarily done comprehensively, but it could be perhaps done still using some consultants and more incremental. So we'll do a little more research. What I'm going to do is put this in as part of our budget workshop discussion, and then we'll get some feedback, because there are two aspects. The first thing is obviously the funding structure for it, and that will be a budget item discussion. So we'll keep that, and then we will schedule this for the upcoming May 13th, budget discussion where we have a full council, and then we'll continue to get some dialogue on that. And then secondly, as far as timing and follow-through and mechanism and all that, that really can be discussed at a later date if you truly decide as a council that this is where you want to go. And that's why we brought this to you. This is not an insignificant item in terms of both the expense or the staff resource and the community resources, because this will be one of the most, if we choose to go down this path, this will have a significant community input. It's going to be necessary and desirable if we want to do this to create the foundation. And I don't disagree with any of your concerns about the price tag, because we've been telling you all along it's pricey.
Well, and then we asked you to bring this information to us, and we appreciate that. I just think that we've been so proactive as a council and as staff, including the community on an ongoing basis, that this isn't new to us. So formalizing it isn't the only way to get feedback and to, share conversations about direction. So whether we continue to do that on an as-needed basis or we formalize it through this process, then we'll discuss it. But I would recommend that do you need a formal action for us to postpone this?
So. No.
This was
That's
just
plenty of
informational
feedback.
anyway.
This was an informational.
So I think we're in agreement that we
So
can.
I have one more question, though. So this isn't in any way going to affect our continuation of amending our general plan?
Correct.
No.
Okay.
We
No,
have
will not.
up to 4
Right.
amendments a year.
Right.
And we're already considering
coming
some changes
Right.
And
currently.
And again, like we talked about, we've talked in the past about doing an element or updating something and bringing it to you as a more incremental approach. And certainly we could try to take a better analysis of what that flow. But again, part of that would be, what's the council interested? If we were to look at some of those things, what are the ones that drive it the most? So I'm just saying, there are approaches other than a whole comprehensive approach. Now,
We'll
those will
revisit
take
that
longer.
on the 13th when we have our whatever number official budget workshop that'll be.
Only 3, which is the precursor to move into budget workshop
Right. So we
number
will
2.
move forward to budget workshop X, introduction and overview. I was sure that we had an introduction already. But anyway, continued introduction.
That was setting the key parameters.
Okay.
So this is our overview. So interested.
Briefly, we're very pleased tonight to be presenting to the council a budget that is, one, balanced, continues to live within our available revenue stream, addresses our fiscal stability, adds and meets our funding targets for our reserves, addresses a few areas from a staff organizational standpoint, and presents a few additional inputs for you to look at in terms of citizen engagement, workflow efficiency, greater use of technology, and still has a little bit of funding, an unallocated balance for the council to look at. So from that standpoint, we're pleased to present that, and I will turn this over to Kathleen to talk to you in a bit more detail, but it is a very favorable situation for the town.
So, with that, we'll proceed with our presentation. Our budget development process, as you all know, not 20 workshops, but we do start our planning in February and March. We have discussions. We did have our first budget workshop March 18th, where we discussed with the council our budget parameters and got some feedback from you all of what you would like to see in the budget. And staff have been working hard on getting the numbers all together this whole time. We're still finalizing some of those numbers to bring back to the workshops coming up later this month. So with that, on June 17th, we're scheduled to adopt our budget. And as town manager said, it will be a balanced budget. And we're take a lot of pride in that, having a balanced budget and maintaining our fiscal stability. So just to summarize some of our key parameters is a balanced budget where we live within our projected revenue stream, and we've established a core level of service that we want to continue, and we're always looking for ways to deliver services more efficiently. And we're continuing to work toward our strategic plan objectives. So some changes and additions that you'll see in the proposed budget as we go through our more detailed workshops later this month include the addition of a new management fellow position in the administration department, and that's a 2-year limited term position. We'd like the council to consider upgrades to our office and website software and our telephone system. We're like you to consider some additional services for managing agenda workflow, civic engagement, and council vote tracking and display system, and that'll be part of the town clerk's budget. And we've also included $50,000 for the town's 50th anniversary celebration in the community promotion budget. Additionally, we're proposing to convert an engineering intern who's been working as a contract employee to a regular full-time position, split between general fund, water, wastewater funds. And we're proposing the addition of a new deputy public works director, and that'll be funded partially by contract service budgets that have been previously part of the capital projects fund. And that's also split between the general fund and the utilities. So some of the things that are included in the proposed budget, we do have the 20% of general fund expenditures in our emergency reserves, so that's at $1.433 million. We have our revenue stabilization at 10% of our projected TOT, so that's currently funded at $590,000. We have our insurance and claims retention at $50,000, and we also have included in the proposed budget 2 contingencies, one just for regular contingencies, things that might come up that need some money, and that's $150,000. And then we also have an assigned for legal contingencies of $150,000. So some policy discussions that the council may want to consider. One of the questions we were asked to bring back, I think this is the Vice Mayor's favorite slide, is what would it take to fully fund our annual required contribution for OPEB? So the current proposed budget includes the 10% OPEB rate, and that's our policy, and that's the $227,330. And per the actuarial valuation that the town last received in 2012, our ARC is actually 284,885. So you can see we're short by $57,555. So there would be a chance for council to determine if they want to fully fund that as part of the proposed budget. And then also some policy discussion to consider is, does the council want to increase our revenue stabilization reserve? And one of the reasons is we are so dependent on tourism and especially TOT. And is 10% or $590,000 enough? It's easy to allocate all the funds and spend them, but maybe we want to save a little while times are good. So here's just some calculations that I did showing what 12.5% of TOT would generate. That'd be $725,000. 15% would be $870, or we could just say we wanted to do a flat amount of $800 or $850, and what those would mean additional funds put into the revenue stabilization reserve. And the proposed budget also includes $500,000 reserve for the future general plan update that you all were just talking about. So that's just a placeholder, and the determination can be made later whether to leave that there for future or allocate it for other things. So this is just a summary of the summary that's included with the staff report, but just showing the beginning fund balance and the total revenue of $8.9 million, less the expenditures of $7.16, to get down to the revenue less expenditures, and then we have our transfers, and we get down to our proposed ending fund balance of $3,261,000. And that's broken out, as you can see here. So we have our emergency reserve and our revenue stabilization reserve. We have our contingencies, our reserve for a future general plan update, and it still leaves, based on our projections, an estimated $330,000 unassigned. So here's a revenue overview, and this highlights our...
Kathleen?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you just said 336.
Yes.
I think she was just estimating.
You
said 330.
Yeah,
it's
330,
336.
yes. I was just rounding.
Can you go
the yellow
okay
number?
on that one?
Yeah, it's this yellow highlighted.
Okay, that's unassigned as opposed
Yes,
to excess.
unassigned.
As opposed to excess. Well, the previous slide says 384. That's why I was still on that one.
Well, yeah, that's just the calculation. Getting to the ending fund balance.
Okay.
Right, and then this is how the $3,261,000 breaks up into the pie.
So I think is your question the excess after transfers number versus this number here?
No, I was on the previous slide. That's
Okay.
why
Sorry.
I heard that number. It was voodoo that it was close.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is a summary of the revenues, and really highlights our primary revenues of TOT, property tax, and sales tax. And those make up over 88% of the general fund revenue stream. And then everything else is about 12% to get to our $8.9 million, basically.
So if I could ask, and you may not know this answer off the top of your head, but it sounds to me like that percentage has been very consistent for many, many years now.
It has.
All three of the pieces of that.
It's inched up just a tiny bit each year, I think, but pretty much 85 to 88, yes.
And with close to 70% of that being TOT,
Yes, over 60%
12-ish with sales and property.
Mm-hmm. Sales tax has inched above property tax.
Thank you.
So this is just showing the breakout of the pie. And you can see after the three primary revenues, the next largest is our parks and rec fees for all our great successful parks and recreation programs, which is 4% of the revenue breakdown. So that's how that shows. So this really shows how we're paying the bills, if you will. The TOT stands out, and then, like I said, the next largest is quickly becoming sales tax. It's inching above property tax just a bit, but they're very close. So that's our history of our primary revenue sources. And I always like showing this slide, the 10-year history of the TOT, because you can really see how it was significant even 10 years ago. It dipped slightly. I think Steve termed that the Yountville dip. That was our recessionary dip. But at the same time, we had new properties coming online and new rooms added at Hotel Yountville, and then we just took off like a rocket. And I'm projecting that we're going to have $6 million in TOT this year. So this is how the monthly trend looks. You can see each month has been higher than the previous year, and that was higher than the year before. And we do say we're going to reach a plateau, and I believe we're going to see it in the next year. There's no more real growth to have. It'll be small incremental bits of growth as room rates go up, and maybe as we fill more rooms during the slow season.
What impact, if any, noticeable will Staggs View Lane housing development have on this formula?
On the TOT?
Yeah, no,
Well,
on property tax.
It will impact property tax, but we didn't factor that into our budget projections because we don't know the timing of the sales or how long it'll take for those properties to come online. But that will be a positive impact on our property tax rolls for sure.
We're talking about a dozen homes listed over $1 million.
Yeah, we're looking at, and again, part of this is the delayed on how long it takes before they actually get in. But you're looking at what will be a one-time $15 to $17 million increase in our assessed value.
And probably a last time of that
Significant.
magnitude at least.
Right. I'm just saying,
yes.
unless something changes in your future general plan with your ag area, yes, because you've got a couple individual homes. We will see, you are seeing our real estate market is hot right now, but our turnover, our turnover is small. So when you look at our base, we turn over 15 homes and they may have increased 200, 300 over what the prior owner paid for them. That's not going to change our base significantly over time.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, maybe $20,000 here, right? I mean, we're not talking big money.
That's correct.
Right.
I mean, it's big on our chart because I do think when you look at the last chart that she.
Well, we went up 29 million from 13 to 14, and that added $25,000 in secured property tax.
Right. You're jumping ahead.
I mean,
it'll have an impact. I mean, knowing what some of these houses have been selling for, we'll see more out of that.
It will have an impact, but you're also correct. That's the scale. I mean, you're putting it correct in the scale of the revenue.
It's been the commercial development that's really added to the tax rolls over the years.
Okay. Don't mean to
get
okay. Off point here.
No, that's part of the workshop.
Okay.
That's what we do. So this is just a slide that shows a graph that shows the cumulative trend for the years, and you can see we started off. It's kind of hard to tell at the beginning, but we started off ahead, and we've just maintained that curve. So it's been very positive for us.
But I do think if we can go back just slightly on that, you'll look at where the starting point is, and you're not seeing as big a increase as you did in the prior years, which is why we do believe that there's less growth capacity in the peak season. So the growth trend would be in the off season.
The 2 months that we now call off season.
Correct. That's why we do believe that our recommendation that this will be flat at some point in time will honestly be true.
If you look at these numbers, they really is in the off seasons where the growth is.
Right.
I mean, it's really
right.
You start to look at where those things.
It's pretty incredible.
November, December are really different than they used to be.
So our sales tax revenue, I know you're all wondering where it comes from, and it comes from our primarily 13 restaurants and food sales, 6 wine sales tasting rooms, 5 retail businesses, and 1 service station. Our top 25 businesses generate over 90% of our sales tax.
You'll notice that our sales tax projection is slightly flat and down, and that reflects the anticipation of the French Laundry going offline for 4 to 6 months. So we've already built that revenue loss from sales tax into the proposed budget.
So you didn't add the increase in the property value because you're not sure of the timing of it?
Yes.
You know that'll be an impact, but
Right.
you don't want to. Okay.
Right.
And we don't know that number, but you're estimating based on history of 4 or 5 months offline of our premier sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. And that's conservative, but we think it's prudent to be so. So this is the assessed valuation history for the last 10 years. And you can see the growth is fairly impressive. Our one low year where we were down growth less than 1% was 2011. Prior to that, 2% was our low in 2009. We've had some years with obviously double-digit increases. So I don't really have a good way to project 2015. So I just took a conservative approach and said property tax will probably go up by about 3%. I don't think that's unreasonable, talking to people up Valley and talking to the county a little bit. And like you said, Mr. Mayor, I think there will be home sales. There will be some increases, but we don't know the timing. So we'll factor those in, and we can always do a mid-year budget adjustment to show that we have more money than we thought. So this is what property tax looks like in thousands. And it looks like it's going down, but it's because we don't budget for the excess ERAF. We're never sure if we're going to get it or how much. So this is general fund expenditures by function. It's a summary again of what's in your packet, and it shows that overall expenditures are decreasing 15.4%, primarily in the general government area, and that's due to no more litigation costs. That's the primary area where we're seeing the decrease, and then that is also offset by some of these new programs and positions that we're requesting as part of the budget. This is just a summary of the transfers, the amounts that make up the transfers, which includes OPEB, and it also includes a $600,000 transfer to Capital Projects Fund, and our transfers for debt service for our 2 bonds.
Kathleen, are we factoring in at this point the new recycled water? That's still outside this fiscal, the additional users and the revenue
That'll be
generated?
part of the wastewater utility, and this is just focused on general.
Right, I understand. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to be on this chart.
Mhm.
It just popped into my head about when should we start factoring in those additional revenues once they start receiving the water.
Let me clarify how you should be looking at the order of magnitude. One, you should be looking at how much the debt service that we're having to pay. The increased revenue from those users is going to be in the tens of thousands, where our obligation is in the hundreds of thousands. So you will start receiving the revenue next fiscal year.
Well, you didn't have to depress me about that. I just asked a question.
I just wanted it to be, right out. But we will get, you will
My
see that.
follow-up question was going to be about the debt service.
You will see a small bump in revenue in the recycled water revenue.
Okay.
All right. So moving right along. This is just a different way to display the expenditures by type. We don't normally show them like this, but I thought it was prudent to do so you could see where the increases and decreases are. So I broke out salaries and benefits, OPEB, for contracted services, public safety, town attorney, legal, and then lumped together all of our operating services and supplies, our community promotion budget, and capital outlay, which in the general fund is just really more like the small tools, equipment, furniture type things that we buy in departments. So you can see overall decrease of $937,000. So it's primarily the decrease in the legal budget and a decrease in public safety offset by some other increases. And these are how the expenditures break out by department, by area, function, however you want to phrase it. So we have our public works at 22%, parks and recreation 20%, public safety at 19%, and then kind of everybody else.
One other thing I'd like to share with you is that, and it's good information or good news. We do have, or we anticipate, Arnold is bringing up approximately 1.68 million next week in the settlement. So this revenue is not reflected in the presentation. So what you will be concluding the year is you will be booking in a special revenue, 1.68. We will then ask that you allocate 800,000 of that to the capital projects fund initially to cover the proposed community renovations at the community center that are in the proposed capital, and then that leaves you approximately 800,000 that would yet be unassigned for you to look at as we resolve our legal situation. So I just wanted to share with you that those numbers are not reflected, and that does reflect both a positive revenue source trend into the general fund and also as a source to help fund the capital projects budget in the CIP, because we do have that project moving forward in next fiscal year for the community center repairs.
So with that, we're happy to answer any questions, feedback.
I'll ask for questions. I do want to put it just a little post-it note and get back to this so I don't forget. I need to discuss the May 27th meeting.
Okay.
So don't let me forget to bring that back up. But
Okay.
questions about the workshop number 2?
I don't really have questions. I don't know
Or
if
comments.
I certainly have comments. Let
Right,
me make
go ahead.
comments.
Sure.
So as we get into budget workshop number 3 and 4, I would like to prepare you all for information that I will certainly be interested in. I think the biggest ones are we're talking about adding staff, and I would like to see the breakdown of what staff we have in terms of these positions. I know some of them are part-time contract. We're converting them to full-time, benefited, pensioned. I'd like to see the cost comparison between those. If we're talking about Deputy Public Works Director, that's partially funded by savings from project management contract services, I would like to see what those specifics are. I've already said what I think about the general plan. I don't even think I need to say OPEB, what I think about that. And I want to say that I really strongly would like to see the council fully fund our ARC if we're thinking about adding new positions. Just scanning through. I think one concern I have is when I look at the transfers is we are significantly reducing the amount that we are transferring to the capital projects fund from the previous year.
That's true because we came back at, I think, mid-year and at end of fiscal year, and we had funds where we did additional transfers. But you're right.
So we are significantly reducing on a year-over-year basis with even higher revenues than we had last year. So that is a point of concern for me that I would. I know we're going to have the capital project.
But let me also, I think that's noted. You also are looking at your 500,000 for the general plan. If you look at that as a 2-year item and then coming back some of that, we're also metering as we anticipate our revenue stream for Measure T. So, I mean, I think you're right, but I also don't think it's long-term. And certainly we will share with you the basis for looking at the staff, because part of this is, and we'll show you where we're coming from, but part of it is what's necessary for us to deliver what you've now become to expect as normal.
I'm going to tell you I'm highly skeptical of adding staff. I'll just make that statement.
Before you
that's all.
continue, can you explain what you meant by metering revenues for Measure T?
Measure T will be coming on board.
Not
and
till
that's
2018.
Right. So what we're doing is metering our expenditures for streets.
Okay.
You know, we ramped up a few, and now we're getting ready and identifying what will be coming forward in 2018. So, I mean, when we look at our capital projects fund balance, I do share the Vice Mayor's concern, but also we have a vehicle with which to put that. We also have the unresolved. I mean, part of what I would be looking at when you add the 800,000 that potentially you'll be bringing in from the potential settlement of the litigation, that's money that you would have in previous years looked at your year end towards allocating to the capital projects fund. So I just want to point out that this is not necessarily an expenditure driven in terms of your fixed cost, although certainly I do understand where you're coming from the concern. And I think what we're trying to show you is exactly as you've indicated. You do have the capacity to do a few things, and we've looked at reserve capital projects allocation. So those are all the types of feedback we're looking for as you finalize the budget.
I do think we need to be careful about Measure T with, obviously you'll be following the protocols of what it can go to, but also when we expect to see any money from that, since it's not going to just show up on January 1st.
That is
Right.
That is correct.
And it's 4 years away.
Right.
And to follow up on the CIP, if I remember correctly, it's been 500 to 600,000 for the last 4 years. So what's proposed is about what's been proposed the last 3 years.
Are you speaking of expenditures?
The,
Out of the
the
CIP?
transfer of 600,000 from general fund to capital projects fund.
Not when we're done.
Initial proposed, but we've always allocated additional during the year.
So on, well, the slides don't have numbers, but it showed 1.2 million 13-14 budget, and then 600,000 14-15 budget. That shows a decrease, but if you compare it to last fiscal year when we proposed the budget, it was about 590,000. Before that was, it's been consistently around 600,000 a year.
Right, but our revenues have gone up. So what we are saying is that next year we don't expect to have $1 million to allocate. And if we're going to spend it on something different, then we just have to realize we're allocating less.
And I'm saying a real quick analysis for you is if you trade out the general plan and you're not doing a general plan at that level, then those numbers are in the $1 million range.
You can read my mind.
I've done around this. I'm just saying, I'm trying to share with you that in many ways the general plan is like a capital project. But it's a shorter term duration. So I'm just saying it's not a built-in long-term expense from that regard. And again, it's the question of the prerogative of the council in terms of how they want to. And as you can see, your staff is trying to be, we're conservative in terms of how we are trying to approach service delivery, but recognizing that we're doing much more on the projects, the regulatory compliance. And I'm going to be very candid, the existing staff allocation is not working for us on the service delivery, and we'll show that to you.
Councilmember Mueller, questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment about the head count. I mean, there's not all I have is TOT revenue over a 10-year period to look at here. But I think there's some proportionality related to that and our total revenue. So my point is that over 10 years, our revenues and expenses, I mean, we've doubled over that, but the head counts really remain the same. So things haven't gotten just that more expensive. There's a lot more work that is going on. It takes people to spend our money. It just is how it is. So I'm supportive of these two head count. I don't think that our town manager would bring this to us, without strong consideration. And, I hear the Vice Mayor's comments that, yes, it's full benefits and full pensions. Whether we like it or not, this is our system. If we want to change our system, that's another discussion. But it is the system, and it is how we run our employees. And I think our town manager has done a great job of bringing in interns and using contract employees. But I think it comes a time where we really have to take a look at the staff and the amount of time and money and effort that goes into running this town and what makes it all work. So I'm supportive of the head count that are in here, so just want to make that comment.
And I think it's appropriate that the Vice Mayor asked for some comparisons to now and what's proposed, just for us to get a feel for what the difference would be and the impacts. But I would also agree with Councilmember Moeller in terms of needing to invest in ourselves as well, especially when we have the opportunity. Were you finished with your comments? I just I hope I'm overreacting to the House Resolution 29. That's a non-binding resolution that was passed in the House.
I sure hope we are, because that would be a delirious effect on the delivery of service in Yountville.
When every time I see the term contract services now, the fact that the House may in the future be requiring a whole new set of parameters in order to use contract services, that makes me nervous to see how much that we're counting on. I know we've been counting on it, and now I just bring it up as a again a post-it note of sometimes when we can consolidate with other jurisdictions instead of I don't know how we're going to answer that if something becomes binding.
That is, I think, very fair, Mayor. For those of you that know, in the budget, we've got a page or two that we talk about our hybrid service delivery model. We use a lot of private partnerships, both with other public agencies and private service delivery. For example, our street sweeping, we contract with a vendor to street the sweeps. We have contracted custodial. We have a number of things that are utilized. We have a partnership with the City of Napa for managing our housing authority. So those things sound very concerning to us because we do run a limited permanent staff supported by a large number of seasonal and part-time employees, especially in how we deliver our park and recreation service. So it's concerning. I'll agree.
Even our garbage pickup is a contract. I mean, we're going to build a dump in Yountville. I mean, the whole thing.
Well, that becomes an interesting one of how they want to define it, because technically it could be considered contracted or franchise. But you are correct. There are some cities that garbage collection is a municipal service.
Right.
But the language as it was passed doesn't prohibit contracting, but it requires first going to, I think, organized labor, which was what I think the motivation behind that was having to go to specific organized businesses. I don't know, Graham, if you had any
I had,
further on that.
We've started to do some research with our Springbrook, and we looked at contract services. So all of our planning, design, project management, construction management over the last 2 years. So in previous fiscal year, we had about $1 million of consultant services. And in the last 9 months, we've had $2 million of consultant services. So a lot of that was town hall, but other capital projects we've been designing for Recycle Water, for Hopper Creek improvements, for Madison Yacht. So we have used quite a bit of consultant services for the last year and 9 months.
And we're going to talk a bit about that. And I do appreciate the dialogue, because I will agree with the Vice Mayor's concern. And one of the things I'm also looking at is there's ownership. And while the consultants are really good, and in certain cases I think it's appropriate, and we'll continue to use our hybrid service delivery, but we also need some ownership. And right now I have too many things that are coming in and landing in the Public Works Director, and it's not coming out in a timely way, and it's pushing the scale of what is appropriate. And I'm just going to say that quite bluntly, and I'll be very direct as we go in with that. We're managing over 25 projects, and he has to touch all of them and others. And we're making some projects in terms of regulatory compliance. As an illustration, we used to have about a $500,000 contract with Coastland to manage the town engineering function, which I've merged back with the Public Works Director. So this is really an attempt to kind of balance and right-size that. But I do definitely get the Vice Mayor's concern, and I hope that our presentation, which you should know we're anticipating that we will be able to explain the basis for why we're looking. And again,
I don't want to go into too much detail, because I really feel like missing 2/5 of our council. I want them to be a part of the dialogue.
And they will. I mean, we will give you the overview, and I will also point out, based on your feedback, the management intern is exactly an attempt to be very nominal and not expose the organization to long-term costs. So again, we track this incremental approach to those types of things.
You can explain that at our budget workshop number 3.
So I do want to get to the conflict I have for our May 27. I mentioned it some weeks ago when we first set that date. I have a standing Napa Fair and Expo board meeting that day, and typically I would miss it. It happens to be 3 days before Bottle Rock, so I am anticipating I may need to be there for any last-minute issues. So I spoke with our town manager about potentially pushing the time back from a 1:30 start to a 3 p.m. start, and if necessary, that might push us to 6 p.m. So it would actually shorten the window, but it would move it later. So instead of 1:30 to 5, we're talking about 3 to 6. And if we can get more stuff done on the May 13th workshop, that may allow us to shorten it even further. So I was going to throw that proposal out. My meeting starts at 1. That would allow me to be there at least for 90 minutes if necessary and get back here for a 3 o'clock start on that budget workshop. So that might be new news to staff, but I think it's new to council. So any thoughts on that?
Shorter is better, so later is better.
Councilor Mueller?
My calendar is fine with that, too.
Okay. So if we can, at least tentatively, and I think we need to still get feedback from, basically, it's only an hour difference. It gives us, in terms of how late it goes, it actually saves us earlier in the day. So if we can propose 3 to 6 on that 27th.
We will do that.
Thank you, and thank you for the accommodation. That should guarantee it's a 10-minute meeting at the Fair Board. So that'll be fine.
No, it won't be.
No, it won't be. Okay, anything else with the budget review for now? I think we're good. Thank you very much, and really good presentation, very clear and to the point. So thank you for
Looked
that.
good on the big screen.
Widescreen.
Does this pace work for you with our focus on trying to just showcase some of the base elements and then highlight the change?
Yeah, I think so, because you give us all the information. It's up to us to absorb the details, and we bring the questions.
We're hearing from you, so we want to make sure that if this approach is working,
I think it's
we
best.
we will build our next 2 workshops in a similar format.
Yeah, I think it's effective to. We don't need to go through every line that we have in either the report or the budget. So
noted. I just want to make sure we're making
I
the modifications.
I couldn't agree more.
All agree.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, moving on to staff informational
That's a
reports.
W.
Keep the momentum going. Tree removal permit for 6680 Yount Street.
Mayor, if I may remember, and the staff informational items are just there for your information.
This
They're
is a
not-
heritage oak tree, and I would like to just recognize that there is a need for the removal, so that people don't think we're
I'm just
ignoring
saying,
it.
our purpose here is if you've got a specific question or a concern, we're here to respond to them for you.
So I have a question.
Councilmember Mueller.
The property owner will be paying for the removal, is that correct?
And that is correct, because that is a privately owned heritage tree.
Great.
Any other questions about that? Seeing none, and then we also have the 4th of July fireworks display on there, so looking forward to having that again this year. Moving on to meeting.
Can I provide one staff informational report?
Absolutely.
Library Commission, our Yountville representative, we did not receive any applications as of the close of the filing period last night. So if anyone is interested in applying, they can see our website, and we are going to extend that recruitment.
Very good. Thank
And
you
one
for that
more.
reminder. Yes.
The Madison Yount project, the sewer line work should start on the week of May 12th, so before our next council meeting. There should be notices and media releases and things going out. And if people want to sign up to get the email with the schedule or more information, they can, in the newsletter has the email address to request that.
And as far as we know, or do you have any update from Caltrans on their other project that was detouring folks on Rutherford Cross?
It's currently on schedule.
So that timing works out for us.
Yes.
And the car crash over the weekend that smashed one of the other bridges, that doesn't affect us, correct?
No.
Okay.
So 2 days into it, they're not behind, is what you're saying.
Right.
All right, that's good.
Well, we can come back and talk about it on June 3rd if you want.
Well, it should be done by June 3rd.
No,
Believe me, they could have not started on time.
that was not a request.
Okay, moving forward. Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. I was at that meeting today, and that board adopted the same hazard mitigation plan that came before us earlier this evening. Also adopted the 2013 Bay Area Integrated Regional Water Management Plan update, which updates, projects, priorities, and other changes since it was originally adopted in 2006. That meeting took approximately 7 minutes, longer than it took for me to find parking downtown. NCTPA, Councilmember Mueller and I attended. We did have the first reading of the 2014-15 draft budget, estimated at approximately $20 million, but it's a very similar budget to last year. No significant increases. The board agreed to salary increase for Executive Director Kate Miller, and the Napa County Grand Jury report was accepted, and a letter of response was sent. It was, I think, there were a couple points that were highlighted, but the main emphasis from the grand jury was that the NCTPA should spend more money on marketing, interestingly enough. So, was there anything else from that meeting that you remembered?
Just one thing specifically about the Yountville trolley and the budget. They're actually budgeting that it's going to cost 20% less to run the trolley based on hard costs for the transportation and fuel than it has in the past. But basically the cost, and they have more closer to actual costs for 2013-14. So I don't know if you want to follow up if that's going down. Also, there was an agreement with the Bank of Marin. They're having cash flow issues because a lot of their cash flow available for operations really is collected on a reimbursement basis, so they really have to wait till the funds come in before they can do stuff. So we approved them to borrow up to $3 million as a debt financing instrument.
Credit line, yep. And those, relying on a decrease in cost when you're talking about fuel costs for the trolley, I'm skeptical about whatever savings we may see there.
I don't know how much it just had a 20% decrease. I don't remember the exact number, but it's going down, not up, which is okay with me.
For now, at least, yes. We'll take it. Upper Valley Waste Management, do you have a meeting? I know there was the Shred It event.
Right. Very successful. We got lots of people came out, and thank you, Samantha, for helping. It was 8,000 pounds. Actually, and before that, we had a hazardous household waste event, which was on Saturday, April 12th. Really, I've been kind of pushing for one near Yountville. This is about as close as I could get, but the majority of the cars were from Yountville, and we had a pretty good turnout, 198 carloads of hazardous household waste. And just for people who've never gone, my favorite thing was they have these tables out there where they take stuff out that looks like a full bottle of fertilizer or something like that. They put it on a free table. So I actually brought more waste home than I left off. But there's a lot of good stuff there. So it might, you guys might want to consider that. Wanted to bring that up. Also, we are getting, because everyone's doing so well with recycling, there's less tonnage going to the landfill. So we're actually expecting about a $10,000 projected budget shortfall, and that amount is pretty significant because that's what runs our JPA meetings and gets staff, pays for staff at the county level to help us. So stay tuned for that. Also, we will probably start losing our beverage container recycling program. All the JPA puts in the funds we get from the state, which is about $25,000 annually, and it pays for a lot of the things that we see on Washington Street in schools for recycling containers for cans and bottles and things like that. So they've decided to probably cut that out. Also, I just want to make a comment about the Yountville Cleanup Day is coming Saturday, May 17th. And so we met offline with Christy Abreu at Upper Valley Waste Management. Cards are going to be sent out. They're going to be different colors, whether you're a residence or multifamily or at the manufactured home parks. And it's going to, you can put this out on the curb. It's really going to help us assess what's really been picked up from which address. We also, this year, we've merged lists, and we're only going to be picking up if you are a ratepayer. So, and also on the back of your list tells you what you can put out and what you can't put out. We're officially accepting e-waste on the curb this year, so that's there as well. So pay attention to this. It's really nice to put this out, but don't worry about not putting it out or if somebody's going to take it. We've got systems in place. So looking forward to another Saturday cleanup day. And I think that's it.
You jumped ahead to comments but instead of meeting reports, but we got that covered. Okay.
Okay.
I was going to go ahead to the League of California Cities North Bay Division meeting. There were two events last week. One was a candidates forum for the District 4 Assembly race, and that was followed by the North Bay Division quarterly meeting, at which we had a speaker panel on water issues, specifically conservation, Delta water bonds, all things water. So that continues to be a hot topic. Other meeting reports, Vice Mayor, did you have any meeting reports? I did attend, and the Vice Mayor actually was there, the Napa Unified School District Board meeting that was here at the Yountville Elementary School last week. There were presentations from first graders and their use of iPads, and fifth graders on the Echo. And I'm still not 100% clear on the Echo system, but everybody seemed to be very engaged by that. The Echo internet teaching tool is what I'll call it.
I will not tell my daughter you said that.
I know. She and her classmates did a fine presentation.
Thank you. Without a microphone, unfortunately, that kind of hurt.
But that is a teaching tool that until this fifth grade class at Yountville Elementary has been limited to middle school and high school, or at least high school.
First
First time
elementary school in the country to use it.
So that was very impressive. For their young ages, very impressive presenters, some really good speakers. This Saturday, I will be going to Davis. There's a bike-friendly community fact-finding ride headed up by Congressman Thompson and other elected officials from Napa County. We're going to hop on a bus, not drive independently, and go and ride a couple miles promoting alternative transportation, especially bikes. No better place than UC Davis. Well, for bikes, I will say UC Davis is fully committed to bicycles, even back when I was there. Legislative Action Day at the Capitol, I was there with the League of California Cities, meeting with our legislators and lobbyists regarding several bills, in particular the solar permitting that we've addressed here before. That is still active, hot bill. And it's concerning that one industry out of any others is basically pushing itself to the front of the line on all things permitting at our local level. Water bonds were discussed, marijuana dispensaries, CEQA reform, and infrastructure financing districts, especially for the communities that no longer have redevelopment. It was mentioned the yard sale. Saturday, I believe Yountville Elementary School actually has a location this year, so that's another spot. Also, I wanted to announce that, actually I believe this was in the Yountville Sun this week, but there's a documentary about the Pathway Home Veterans Treatment Program that has been accepted to the Cannes Film Festival, which is happening next week. And the French filmmaker, he lived with the Pathway home members back in 2008, lived here for about a year, and then followed their lives for the next 5 years. And so his 2-hour and 22-minute documentary has made it to Cannes, and hopefully we'll be getting back to the U.S. after that, and we are diligently working on trying to get screening here in Yountville. But he seems to be very open to that, depending on what happens with the ownership of that movie from Cannes. Those are the reports and announcements that I have. Any others from Council? No. Councilmember Mueller?
I have one that's kind of ancillary to the League of California Cities. It was in American Canyon, and they had this on all the tables. It was just a nice little brochure that they put out about their city, and I kind of told me that we didn't really have one of these, and I thought there was a lot of useful information in here, and so it might be something. Budget's coming up. I don't know how much these things cost to prepare, but I think we should consider something like this.
They also do an online e-newsletter that I think is a monthly newsletter. So
And they also have a full-time community outreach coordinator.
So when we have that conversation about staffing, we can have the conversation about printing.
Do you want to hear my
newsletters.
comments?
No.
Oh, okay.
No need for closed session, is that correct?
That is correct. Excellent.
So then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to our next budget workshop special meeting of Tuesday, May 13th at 1:30.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thankfully, it unanimously passes.
Whew,
Or
it's
else we
close.
might still be here.
I didn't hear you say aye.
Didn't say no.
Okay.
Thank you and good night.